Kallid daamid ja härrad, olge head, tervitame siia aplausi saatel Finnish National Board of Educationi haridusnõuniku Aapo Koukku. Olepa hea, Aapo!
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank Innove for inviting me to speak here. Thank you. I come from the Finnish National Board of Education, which is a development agency subordinate to the Ministry of Education and Culture. We are nowadays a little bit less than 300 people working there, and our main task is design the national core curricula, pre-primary education, primary, secondary education, which means general upper secondary, vocational, and adult education. Higher education, polytechnics and universities are not our concern that much, because enjoy the steering of Ministry of Education and Culture directly. Okay, then just very shortly, generally I try to be very shortly. You can see here where is the vocational education placed in our system. It's secondary level. It's a 3 years program. We have 52 titles, all 3 years. Then we have also on the right side from you, further vocational qualification, specialist vocational qualification, which are meant to adults. Adults can also take the vocational qualification. And for these 3 boxes, there is also the apprenticeship route available. The mainstream way of doing vocational education and training in initial vocational training is school-based. And if you think young people, 15, 16 years, less than 10% choose the apprenticeship way. It might be even nearer 5 than 10, the percentage. But on the contrary, if you think adult education, the apprenticeship way to have a preparatory training for these further and specialist vocational qualification, that is very popular. That's why we had to put quota numerus clausus to adult education in apprenticeship education. But maybe I will explain later the reasons why the situation is like that. And as you also can see, there are very many arrows coming from everywhere and going to everywhere, which means that there are no dead ends in our system. No matter if you choose general upper secondary or vocational, if you have motivation later on, you can always continue till higher education studies. But all the polytechnics and universities have entrance exams, so you have to be successful. You are eligible to apply, but that's not automatically that you will get a place. Then what happens after basic education, just to show you that vocational education and training is not a second choice in Finland. You can see the development during 10 years, and nowadays general upper secondary is still a little bit more popular, but vocational road has become more attractive during the last 10 years. So 42% chooses the vocational road. Some main features of the Finnish vocational education and training as I mentioned, mainly within institutions, but there is some work-based learning included. And this apprenticeship training I already mentioned, it is expanding slowly, but not so fast as we hope if we think the young students. We have more or less 130 VET providers, and with these providers I mean municipalities or federations of municipalities which usually maintain, own and run the vocational institutions. There might be also some foundations, but usually the municipalities are also with. So in that sense, we don't have a pure private education providers, because if there is a private foundation as an owner, the training provider needs a license from the Ministry of Education and Culture, authorization to start the vocational education and training. And once the provider gets that license, then all the same rules apply. The same financing, they have to follow the national core curriculum, national qualification requirements as the municipal owners. So in that sense, there is no, well, we have some private education also providers in vocational education, but that's very small amount, and that's a little bit different. The dropout rate is more or less 9%. In European context, that's rather good, but we are not satisfied. We try to push it down. I think the national goal is nowadays 8%, but still it's too big. And there is a special development program also launched by the Ministry of Education and Culture to decrease this dropout rate. Education philosophy is based on delegation of responsibility to local level. Since 1980s, we have done this decentralization, which means that the central government has changed the decision-making power to local level. So at the moment, the VET providers, they are rather autonomous. Everything what comes to running the school, the everyday school running, they can decide. They don't have to ask higher authorities. Okay. This is just to show you some examples what it means. The central level, which I mean the ministry and the Finnish National Board of Education, decides on educational priorities. This is generally not only vocational education and training, but also others. National core curricula, as I mentioned, National Board is responsible for drawing up those. But then allocation of subsidies which they get from Ministry of Education and Culture, in detail they can do on local level. They can decide, they get the lump sum based on unit price per student nowadays. They can decide whether the education provider hires new teacher or buys some machinery, tools, equipment. It's their decision. Here is the structure of vocational qualification. You don't have to think about this credit system. This is a purely maybe Finnish system, but the duration is 3 years, and as you can see, if you put the credits together, it makes 120, which means that it's 3 years. So there are more than 2 years vocational units, and there has to be at least 20 credits, which means half a year at least on the job learning. And that's the minimum, but we have not regulated the maximum. If the education provider decides that it shall be more, then they can do it. There is no upper limit. We introduced skills tests more or less 10 years ago, which means that the students have to demonstrate the skills what they have learned mostly during the on-the-job learning periods. And the trainers, the workplace instructors are needed, for example, to evaluate, to assess these skills test situations. Then we have half a year core units, languages, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so. And when we introduced this on-the-job learning periods, that was in the end of 2010, no, before 2006, something like that, we realized the importance of trainers, those experts working in workplaces and guiding, instructing, counseling the young students who come there to learn. And as I mentioned, there is 3 ways to get the vocational qualification. This school-based way. Then apprenticeship training is both for young people and for adult. And then competence-based qualifications for adults. These are the 3 ways. And all in these ways, we need the trainers. Here I have collected some strategic documents that recognize the importance of workplace learning and also the role of trainers. Of course, the legislation is there. Then we have the development plan, which we make for 5 years. That is approved by the government. And it's a kind of Bible. What is written there, it usually will come true. It's an important document. The quality management recommendation, then Ministry of Education has launched a quality strategy. Of course, national qualification requirements mention the on-the-job learning and workplace learning, and also the role of trainers in workplaces. And these so far are more or less done by the authorities. But the last one is a recommendation on learning at the workplace. That has been signed by state municipalities, but also central labor market organizations and other organizations, which means that this is more or less fully covering all the players in the Finnish society. And this recommendation says that on-the-job learning is important and part of vocational education and training. Then I come slowly to the point, training of trainers. Well, we started the training once we introduced the on-the-job learning periods. And so far we have trained half of the trainers. So the work is not done. We still have a lot of work to do. The training of trainers is a responsibility of education providers. But the government has also promoted the implementation of workplace learning and the training of trainers by subsidizing and funding projects. But we have also used European social funds. And I counted that since the beginning of 2000, so during 13-14 years, we have used more or less maybe 14-15 million euros of European social funds, plus in addition the national money, which is 60%. This ESF money is 40%. In projects which all include also the training of trainers. And we have also produced on national level, which means mostly by the Finnish National Board of Education. First of all, we have a training for workplace instructors. That is a national recommendation where the professional profile of trainers is described. In other words, that is the qualification requirements for the trainers. But that is not, that is only recommendation. We don't want to make it obligatory to train the trainers, because we have also very short tradition in this workplace learning in this way. And we are worried that that will be too bureaucratic and binding, and we don't get the trainers anymore if we put very strict requirements. We recommend very much that they have the training. Based on this recommendation, we have produced some guides which are based on these projects which I mentioned, which the education providers have done during these 13 years. We have picked the good practices of them, and we have written guides. What are good ways to train trainers? And on the other hand, how we encourage the teachers during their workplace periods, because we recommend that also teachers, even we have very good quality of teachers, vocational teachers, we hope that they, let's say, every five years or something like that, they go to workplaces to refresh their skills and professional skills and competencies. We have also produced a competence map for workplace instructors, which is some kind of self-evaluation tool where the trainer can see what he or she is supposed to be able to have in order to guide and instruct the young people. We have also these green ones have been, and also the training 3 credit has been translated into English. Of course, they are in Finnish and Swedish. We have also translated them into the Russia. And that is not because of the crisis in Ukraine. We started to translate them even before, because we had some projects with Russian, and that was relevant to have these kind of. So we don't translate everything in Russian yet. Well, here are some more details. For example, the guide on implementing workplace instructor training includes these good examples, and there is also criteria for the training of workplace instructors. So you can find this also in internet if you go to the website of National Board of Education. I think I explained this already. And here is the training program. It has 3 modules: planning of training in the workplace, and also planning the vocational skills demonstrations and competence tests. The competence tests are tests for adults, and the vocational skills demonstration for young people doing the on-the-job learning period. Then instructing the student and assessing learning, and third, assessing the students' or candidates' competencies. So these are the main tasks also of the trainer. This is the profile. It is explained more detailed in the document. And here is one picture of the competence map, which tries to illustrate also the competencies needed for a trainer. It is 3 credits in practically 10 days, but we try to, this is a nominal duration. We try to be as flexible as possible, because we know that most companies in Finland, as in many other countries, are small and medium-sized companies, and they don't have the time to send their trainer for training for a few days. So we try to avoid this kind of situation if possible, but we in these guides there are explained the ways how we can flexibly inform the trainers and train them. The education providers have also produced quite a lot of material related to this training of trainers, which they have put in internet. They have had regional projects in different parts of Finland, and they produced very good material. So the trainer can also do some distance learning, actually very much can do distance learning, and if he or she is interested in some details. And as I said, it is not obligatory for trainers to have this training, but we recommend, of course, very much that. And a training provider is responsible for the accreditation of prior learning and awarding of the certificate. One good way is that when the students are on the job, in their on-the-job learning periods, and the teacher goes to supervise them every now and then, which they have to do. During these visits, the vocational teacher and the trainer, they can exchange information, and the teacher can train the trainer, and at the same time the teacher sees what is happening in real working place. And the financing of the training can be in many ways. It can be included in some development projects. And nowadays we don't allocate so much anymore special money for this training. We think that this has been going on 15 years, so now they have to find the ways to train the trainers. And if they use this flexible and all kind of situation where teacher and trainer meets, that could be a training event. Here are some brochures, and here is the address to the guides if you are interested. So, thank you very much. This is the Finnish case.